Hi everyone. So I wasn't expecting to be back so soon with another Hero Arts video, but I got to playing with my December fairies and dandelions kit this morning, and I just had so much fun that I thought I would stop by and share these two single layer cards with you that I had made earlier today. So these are single layer cards, so we're going to do a lot of masking, and when you're masking, you want to stamp the images that you want to appear in the forefront of the scene first, and then anything behind them second after you mask that first image. So in the case of the fairy sitting on a mushroom, we stamped her first and then masked her and then stamped the mushroom behind her so that when we pull the mask off, it will look like she is sitting on the mushroom. And I am going to do a Distress Oxide ink background for this card. It's a little different from the Copic backgrounds that I usually do, but I wanted a background behind the fairies that just looks like this real beautiful blue misty sky that just kind of fades out into nothing. And you can achieve that look with Distress Oxide inks. And you could do the same, I think, with Distress inks, although with Nina Solar White paper, which I'm using here because it, in my view, is the best paper for Copics, the Distress Oxides will blend better. You'll have trouble blending just regular Distress inks into the Nina Solar White. And also you get more of an opaque look with the Distress Oxides. I use tumbled glass for the sky, and then we're going to use evergreen bow or evergreen bough, not sure how to say that, for the grass that the mushrooms are sitting on. And I just put a light coat down. We are going to dress up that grass later on with some Copic details. So now I'm going to take the masks off, and like magic, we see our little fairy just sitting on top of the mushroom, and I'm just working on my blend a little bit more because I really just want it to look like it's fading out into nothing. For the mushrooms, we're going to use some red and orange and yellow Copic markers for this. And my inspiration for the coloring for these mushrooms actually comes from a class that's taught by Kit and Clowder. I had never heard of that company before, but I saw some mention of them on different stamping Facebook pages about people talking about how wonderful it is and it's the best place to go to learn Copic coloring. So I went to the site and I signed up for one of their classes, and I have to tell you, I'm just about a half a class in, and it is amazing, and I'm learning, I'm really learning some great techniques in the class, and coloring mushrooms just happened to be one of them. So I tried to use some of those techniques in this drawing. So I highly recommend, if you really want to up your game on Copic coloring or on colored pencil coloring, to check out Kit and Clowder and see if some of their classes might be right for you. I mean, so far I'm loving it. I think I'm gonna keep going with the monthly classes, and I'm just excited for all the things I can learn. Okay, so back to the mushrooms. So the colors that I'm using in the mushrooms are R89, R29, R27, R24, and then YR something. I guess we'll see when it comes back on screen. But I had never thought to use the YR12. YR12 is what it is, to kind of blend out R24, and that's something that I learned in that Kit and Clowder class, and I'm really, really happy with how that looks, how that blend looks. It just makes the mushroom look like it's glowing, and I think I'm going to start using that combination in some of my other Copic coloring pieces as well, because it's just beautiful. So for the little like blemishes on the mushroom, I guess you would call them, I'm circling them with E47 just because I want to make it look like there's a shadow under them, make them look like they're popping off the page a little. But these images were really, really small, so it was hard to achieve that effect. I think on a bigger image it might have worked better, but nevertheless I'm happy with how it looks, so I just kept going with it. And each mushroom I'm coloring a little bit different. Some of them I'm using darker shades within those colors that I mentioned. Some of them I'm using lighter ones. This mushroom over on the left here, I'm going to use my darkest color, so it's going to be a combination of R29 and then R24, a little bit of R12 just to give it that beautiful little glow that you get, and then R89. And then we're going to use E43, E44, and E47 to shade the underside of the mushrooms. And this is another trick that I learned in the class, and it's just an example of, one of the many things that you can learn in the kit and clouder classes was how not just to use colors to shade, but also to add texture. So here we're going to apply like a thin line of the E47 and then E44, but then we're also going to dot it as well along the sides just to make it look like the mushrooms are dirty. And I use this technique sometimes in for other things, but I never used it for this purpose to try to make like a vegetable or something coming out of the ground look like there's dirt on it. And I think it's really effective and beautiful, and I think this will definitely be another technique that I incorporate into my just general coloring. So I'm just I start my dots with my darkest color, and then I go over them with my lighter color. So I start with E47, and then I go to E44 and then E43, and I'm just focusing on any spots where there would be a shadow. So like the underside of the mushroom, the sides of the mushroom, and I'm trying to keep the center fairly light just so that, because ultimately we want our mushroom stem to appear as though it's white, just that it's dirty. So that's kind of what I was going for. And then I thought I'd put a few little specks of dirt on top of the little blemishes or the little polka dots or whatever they are on top of the mushrooms as well. So that's what I'm doing. And then next we're going to move into coloring in the fairy. And for her hair, I just did very simply E25 and then I think it's E29. And I'm just doing tiny little flicks the same way that I would do hair on a larger image, but there's a lot less room, so you kind of have to pick and choose your battles in terms of like where you're going to flick and what parts of the hair you're going to try to give texture to. So I tried to do that on the parts that are largest, and for the rest of it, just leave it like one color. For her skin, I'm going to use E21, E11, and then E13, and I'm going to put little shadows underneath her forehead and underneath her neck, and at the place where her knees are kind of coming out from her pants, we're going to add some shading there. And then also for her clothing, I'm going to use BV02, BV00, and then BV04, and I'm just kind of putting some shading in wherever I can fit it in, really. Trying to make sure that I leave a good amount light and then only some areas dark. For her fairy wings, I used RV000 and RV00, and then I'm going to go over the entire base of her wings with the shimmer pen that is included in the kit, and then I also added some little shimmer dots with the pen to her clothing. And for the grass details, I'm going to use G24 and then G28 and then YG, I think 99. And I'm just going to make little flicks with my pen to make it look like they're little blades of grass or weeds kind of coming up and around the mushrooms. And you just want to make sure you have a variety of colors, so 2 to 3 colors just to give it some depth, with your lighter colors kind of extending out above your darker colors so it looks like they're farther away from us. I'm going to add some highlights with a white gel pen, of course, so we're going to put some little speckles all over those mushroom blemishes and the undersides just to kind of make the coloring detail that we did pop. And now we're going to add a sentiment from the main kit with black VersaFine ink, and this one says sending happy fairy wishes your way, and I just think it's so adorable. I love this little scene with the little fairy kind of sitting amongst a little cluster of mushrooms in the ground. And that is it. So here is the lighter version that I was telling you about, where I did a lighter blend. Next, we're going to go on to our second card. And for this one, we're going to use a different fairy image in the kit. This is a little fairy who looks like she's lying down, and we're going to have her lie down on these pretty little flowers. I don't know if they're daisies or dandelions or sunflowers or what, but we're going to color them in like they're sunflowers, or even I guess like they're those little yellow. Maybe they're dandelions. I'm not up on my on my flowers. Sorry everyone. But they're going to be pretty. That I can tell you, they're going to be colored pretty. So we're going to have our little fairy who's sleeping, and then we're going to have a little fairy who is sprinkling fairy dust on top of her. And we're going to do another Distress Oxide blended background, and I'm using Chip Sapphire, Faded Jeans, and then Tumbled Glass with the darker colors towards the top of the scene. And I'm just kind of blending everything together best I can. I really wanted to kind of have the darker part in kind of like an L shape around the little fairy at the top, just so that it looks like the scene starts coming alive right at the place where she is sprinkling her little magic fairy dust. So now it's time to peel off all the masks. And here you're going to see I didn't do a perfect job in stamping my images. I didn't get full impressions for some of them, so I'm just going to draw in some little stems wherever that happened. And there are so many daisies in this background that you're just not even going to notice. So what I would recommend to you is, if you have a situation like that happen where you have a background where it's just a lot of stamping and you've done a lot of masking, you make a little mistake, just, you know what, go with it. Just you can just fill in the missing lines yourself. And I used a Copic multi-liner for that, which is, of course, Copic friendly, a Copic friendly marker. For the skin tone on our little fairies, I'm going to use E31 and E35. And I'm going to just put the tiniest bit of shading, like on the forehead and then underneath the neck, a little bit on the arms, on the legs and the feet of this little fairy, and her back. And then I'm going to blend it all together. And then we're going to move on to coloring in our little dandelions or sunflowers or daisies or whatever they may be. We'll just call them flowers. And I'm going to use the YR12 as my base for the flower petals that are highest up. And then the ones that are darker, I think that was YR15 that I used. And then I'm just going to do some flicking motions on either end of the petals, having them kind of be pointed towards the middle, leaving the middle fairly light. And I'm just going to go over that with a bunch of different yellow-orange Copic markers. So I think YR18 is the darkest color we're going to use. I saw some YR15 in there. YR12 is the base. And I'm just going to keep flicking and flicking. Oh, our YR27 is the darkest color we're going to use for this one. And I'm just going to keep flicking and flicking until I get a blend that I like, making sure to keep the centers of the flowers lightest. So I don't usually draw or color in flowers, so this is kind of new to me. So because I wasn't quite familiar with what the technique is, I just followed the same technique that I would use if I was coloring in hair, which would be you kind of just flick on either end towards the middle, and you just do it with different markers that are different shades of the same tone, so that it appears like you have a highlight in the center. And that ends up working really, really well for these flowers, given how they're positioned, because the center part of each of the petals, if you could see that, they're going to be the ones that are kind of puffed out or closest to us, or like the convex part of the shape, so they naturally would be the lightest. So it just happened that the one technique that I kind of know and understand pretty well, it worked for these flowers. And I guess I will have to figure out how to do other types of flowers as I encounter them in stamping. Not sure why that is. There's so many people who do really, really beautiful work with flowers, and it's just something that it's never kind of come easy to me. I've never really been interested in it. I really like doing backgrounds. I like doing little critters. I like people. I like food, but the flowers, it just never really grabbed me. But it's a new year, so maybe with a new year, I'll start feeling differently. I don't know. So just going to go back to coloring in these flowers, and I'm just trying to make each flower a little bit different color, but keeping everything in the orange gold color family. I didn't really have a plan when I started out, had no idea what color I was going to make the flowers. I just knew that once I colored in the fairy who's lying down with her skin, I just thought it would look really, really pretty if she was laying down on a dark orange flower. And then I thought all the other flowers should kind of not be the focal point. So I made them lighter so that the one she's lying on stands out. So that's kind of why I went with lighter colors on the others. For the inside of the flower, because we use so much yellow, I couldn't really use yellow for the inside. So I'm using some warm grays. I'm using warm gray 1, 3, and 5 for our little flower centers. And I know they have a name, but I'm not a flowers person, so I can't remember offhand what they are, and I don't want to pause the voiceover to go Google it. So we'll just call them the centers of the flowers. For our little fairy's nightgown, I'm going to use R81 and R85. I just thought that the pink would go nice with the yellow and orange that's around her. And then I'm just drawing in her hair with E25 and then some details with E29. And then I'm going to do the same with the little fairy who's sprinkling fairy dust with her little bun. So just using those two, E25 and E29. For the fairy's gown, I'm going to use V01 and V05 for the top part of the gown, and then some really light RVs for the bottom. So RV91, RV93, and then RV95. And here I'm trying to practice on my fabric folds, trying to give some dimension to it, but it was a really small image. And again, like fabric folds is something I need to work on and learn. So it looks like there's some movement, but it's, I'm sure as I learn more about fabric, I'll get better at that. For the fairy wings, I just thought it would be fun to make them in a few different kind of really, really pretty blue, green, and pink, purple shades. So that's how I shaded them. I just kind of did the tips in a blue, green, and then, had the bottoms pink, and then where they meet in the middle, it kind of turned purple. I wanted there to be a little bit of a shadow around all the little flowers and the fairy who's lying down. So I'm just going over the seam with my W5 and my W1 markers and just making it again look like there's some kind of mist rising up. For the fairy's wand, it got kind of washed out with the Distress Ink background, so I just colored it in black with a Copic multi-liner pen in black. And then we're going to add our little white highlights, and I use the little white dots to make some fairy dust coming out of the fairy's wand. And we're going to sprinkle it all over the fairy, and then we're going to add some white highlights to the flowers. So I'm just adding some little streaks here and there on the petals, going up and down. And then we're just going to add some fairy dust all around the edges of the scene, around where the little fairy who's lying down is. So it looks like the flying fairy, that her magic is just, being sprinkled all over the little fairy who's lying down. And then we're going to use our sparkle pen that comes in the kit to add some more interest to the fairy dust. And we're going to cover the wings entirely in the sparkle pen, so it's nice and bright and shiny. And it also gives it kind of like a translucent look when you cover it with a sparkle pen. And then I also added some little sparkle dots to the clothing of the fairies. Now we're going to stamp our sentiment. And this one says, "May all your wishes come true." And we're going to use our black VersaFine ink. And I'm going to stamp that using my Mini Misty. I'm going to do a double impression, just to make sure it's nice and black and crisp. And that's it. So that is our second card. So I would love to hear from you in the comments which of the cards you like best. I'd also like to know what types of card making videos would you like to see in the coming year. I know I'm really looking forward to Valentine's Day. I definitely want to do some more lingerie cards like I did last year. I'm looking forward to doing some more lawn fawn stuff and lots of other things coming up. So let me know in the comments what you would like to see in the coming year, or even, I guess, closer in time, just in the coming few weeks. I'd like to know that. All right, have a great weekend, everyone, and I will see you again in the next video.